Ranger Cole. Brennan's weathered hands trembled as he stared into eyes identical to his own, piercing blue, like mountain ice. The teenage girl he'd just pulled from the trafficking ring's canyon hideout whispered words that shattered his carefully constructed world. "You're my father, aren't you?" Behind them, gunshots echoed through the rocks as his own brother's voice shouted orders to kill them both. Cole Brennan stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror at 5:30 a.m., same as every morning for the past 15 years. 38 years old, weathered face telling stories he'd rather forget, and those piercing blue eyes that reminded him too much of decisions he couldn't take back. The scar above his left eyebrow came from a bar fight in El Paso. The deeper scars? Those were invisible. His cabin looked like a monk's cell. No photographs on the walls, no personal touches. Just a badge, a gun, and enough guilt to fuel a small power plant. Well, that's what happens when you spend half your life running from who you used to be. The coffee was always black. The routine was always the same. Shower, shave, coffee, badge, gun, drive. Rinse and repeat until the day he died, or found whatever he was looking for. Problem was, he'd stopped believing he'd ever find it. Then, his phone rang. Captain Martinez's voice cut through the morning silence like a blade. "Brennan, we've got reports of human trafficking along the Rio Grande. Girls disappearing near Devil's Canyon. You're our man." The word girls hit him wrong. Always did. Cole's hand tightened around his coffee mug until his knuckles went white. "How many?" "At least 6 in the past month. All teenagers. All vanished without a trace." Something cold settled in Cole's stomach. The kind of cold that meant this case would be different. But why? He'd worked trafficking cases before. What made this one feel like walking toward a cliff in the dark? 3 hours later, Cole found himself crouched behind a boulder in Devil's Canyon, studying an abandoned campsite through binoculars. The traffickers had been here recently. Fresh tire tracks, still warm ashes, and scattered on the ground like breadcrumbs from hell. Personal belongings that told stories he didn't want to read. A hairbrush with long brown strands. A torn photograph. A silver necklace with a small cross. Then he saw the photograph more clearly. Cole's blood turned to ice water. The face in that torn picture looked familiar in a way that made his chest tight. Not someone he knew exactly, but someone who shared features he recognized. The eyes especially. Those same piercing blue eyes that stared back at him every morning. Makes sense that his past would catch up with him in the worst possible way, right? The scream that echoed through the canyon walls made his decision for him. High-pitched, desperate, female, and close enough that Cole could do something about it. He moved through the rocks like smoke, 15 years of ranger training taking over. The trafficking operation's temporary holding site came into view. 3 armed guards, expensive equipment, and a cluster of terrified girls huddled together like wounded animals. Professional setup. Big money. This wasn't some amateur hour kidnapping ring. But it was one girl who stopped Cole's heart cold. She sat apart from the others, back straight, chin raised in defiance. When she lifted her head to scan the canyon walls, Cole found himself staring into eyes identical to his own. Not similar. Identical. Like looking into a mirror that showed him someone he could have been if he'd made different choices 15 years ago. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Sarah's face. Sarah's tears. Sarah's voice calling his name as he walked away from the best thing that ever happened to him. No, it couldn't be. But those eyes didn't lie. And neither did the way she held herself. Proud, stubborn, ready to fight even when the odds were impossible. Just like her mother. Just like him. The girl was studying the canyon walls with the intensity of someone planning an escape. Smart kid. Brave kid. The kind of kid who'd been raised right by someone who knew what real strength looked like. Cole's radio crackled, but he barely heard it. Everything had changed in the space of a heartbeat. This wasn't just another rescue mission anymore. This was the reckoning he'd been running from his entire adult life. Cole moved through the canyon like death itself, silent, purposeful, and absolutely certain about his destination. The first guard went down without a sound. Tranquilizer dart to the neck. The second one got the same treatment before he could blink. 15 years of ranger training made this part feel like breathing, but his hands were shaking. They never shook during operations. The third guard presented a problem. He was positioned too close to the girls, assault rifle casually pointed in their direction. One wrong move and Cole would be responsible for more deaths than he could live with. And looking at that defiant girl with his own eyes staring back at him, that wasn't happening. Not today, not ever. Cole waited. Patience was a weapon most people never learned to use properly. When the guard turned to light a cigarette, Cole struck. A precise blow to the pressure point behind the man's ear. The guard crumpled like a house of cards in a tornado. "I know you," the girl whispered as Cole cut through her zip-tie restraints with his tactical knife. Her voice carried an accent he recognized. East Texas, same region where he'd spent that wild summer 15 years ago. Same cadence as her mother's voice in his memories. Cole kept his focus on the other girls, methodically freeing them while his world tilted off its axis. "We need to move. Now. Can you walk? My mother described you perfectly." The girl's words hit him like bullets. "She said you had honest eyes, even when you were lying to yourself." The other, rescued girls, faded into background noise. Cole's entire universe had suddenly contracted to this one conversation, with this one person who shouldn't exist, but absolutely did. "What's your name?" "Emma." She rubbed circulation back into her wrists, watching his face like she was solving a puzzle. "Emma Sarah Mitchell. My mom was Sarah Chen. Well, Sarah Chen, who used to be Sarah Mitchell before she got married and divorced and went back to Mitchell because life's complicated like that." Sarah. Jesus Christ. Cole's chest felt like someone had reached inside and rearranged his organs. Sarah Chen, the graduate student who'd made him believe in forever, for exactly 4 months before he decided forever was too scary and bolted like a coward. The woman who'd looked at him like he was worth saving. The woman who'd been pregnant when he left. "She died 6 months ago," Emma continued, her voice steady, but her eyes showing the grief she'd learned to carry. "Cancer, fast and brutal. But before she died, she gave me a name and a badge number. Cole Brennan, Texas Ranger. She said if I ever needed to understand why she made the choices she did, I should find you." The confirmation hit Cole like a physical blow. 15 years of rigid routine, of punishing himself with isolated discipline, of building his entire identity around being the opposite of who he was at 23. All of it crumbled in the space of a heartbeat. He had a daughter. Had always had a daughter. She'd been growing up, learning to walk, starting school, becoming this fierce young woman while he'd been playing monastic ranger in his guilt-fueled cabin of self-denial. Sarah had raised her alone. Sarah had gotten sick alone. Sarah had died alone. Because he'd been too much of a coward to face the consequences of love. "We need to move," Cole managed, his voice rougher than canyon wind. The other girls were already heading toward the evacuation route he'd planned. But Emma wasn't moving. She was studying his face with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. "You're scared of me," she observed. Not accusatory, just factual. "That's interesting. Mom said you were scared of everything real. Guess some things don't change." Cole almost smiled despite the circumstances. The kid had Sarah's directness and his own stubborn refusal to let things slide. Dangerous combination. "I'm scared of failing you the way I failed her." "Good." Emma shouldered a backpack she'd grabbed from the trafficker's supplies. "Fear means you give a damn. Mom always said indifference was the real enemy." They moved through Devil's Canyon, toward the extraction point Cole had mapped out earlier. The rescued girls stayed close, but Emma walked beside him like an equal partner in this operation. Every few steps, she'd scan the terrain with tactical awareness that made his ranger instincts proud and his paternal instincts terrified. "How long have you been looking for me?" Cole asked, as they navigated a particularly treacherous stretch of loose rock. "6 months. Ever since Mom died." Emma's matter-of-fact tone didn't hide the steel underneath. "Turns out tracking down Texas Rangers isn't that hard when you're motivated. But staying ahead of the people who grabbed me? That was trickier." Cole stopped walking. "You mean this wasn't random?" "Nothing's random." Emma's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I've been asking questions about Cole Brennan for months. Someone noticed. Someone who really didn't want us to have this conversation." The sound of approaching vehicles echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. Too many engines. Too organized. Cole's blood turned cold as he realized they'd walked straight into a trap. But not just any trap. The voice that called out across the canyon was one Cole hadn't heard in 2 years. Rich, charming, and absolutely devoid of conscience. "Cole! Brother! Bring the girl and come on out. Let's have ourselves a family reunion." Marcus Brennan stepped into view with 6 armed men flanking him like a presidential security detail. Same piercing blue eyes as Cole. Same stubborn jawline. Same Brennan family features that made Emma's sharp intake of breath entirely understandable. "Your brother?" she whispered. "Unfortunately." Cole's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "Stay behind me." Marcus spread his arms wide in a gesture of mock welcome. "Come on, Cole. Is that any way to greet your baby brother? Especially when I've gone to so much trouble to arrange this touching father-daughter reunion?" The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Marcus had known about Emma's search, had been tracking her questions, her movements, her desperate need to understand her mother's past. The trafficking ring was real, but it was also bait. Emma had been used as bait to draw Cole into a trap designed by his own family. "You son of a bitch," Cole called back. "She's just a kid." "She's leverage," Marcus replied cheerfully. "And she's been asking too many questions about the wrong members of the Brennan family tree." "You always were too rigid about right and wrong, Cole. Some of us learn to adapt." Emma's hand touched Cole's arm. "He's been planning this for months, hasn't he?" "Probably years." Cole's mind raced through tactical options. 6 armed men, high ground, limited cover, and his daughter standing next to him, like a living reminder of everything he had to lose. The same choice he'd faced 15 years ago was staring him in the face again. Run away to save himself, or stay and fight for someone who needed him. This time, though, he knew exactly what kind of man he wanted to be. Marcus's voice echoed off the canyon walls one more time, carrying a promise that made Cole's blood run cold. But Emma was already moving, and Cole realized his daughter had inherited more than just his eyes. Emma was already moving when Marcus finished his threat, and Cole realized his daughter had inherited more than just his stubborn streak. She'd also gotten his tactical instincts and her mother's refusal to be anyone's victim. "Left flank, 2 shooters behind the red rocks," she whispered, pointing with minimal movement. "Right side has 3, but they're bunched too close together. Bad positioning." Cole stared at her. "How do you—" Mom didn't raise a helpless princess. Emma checked the pistol she'd taken from one of the unconscious guards. Professional grip. Proper stance. Sarah had prepared their daughter for a world that wouldn't always be kind. "She taught me to shoot when I was 12. Said the world was full of men like my father's family." The word family hit different when it came with gunfire. Marcus was still talking. Something about loyalty and blood being thicker than badges. But Cole wasn't listening anymore. He was watching Emma assess angles and cover points like she'd been born for this. The kid was calm under pressure. Scary calm. "On my signal, you take the right flank," Cole told her. "Stay low, move fast, and don't get shot. Got it." Emma's smile was sharp enough to cut through bulletproof glass. "Any other fatherly advice?" Or are we doing this? They were doing this. Cole's first shot took out the sniper on the high ledge. Clean headshot that would have made his training instructor proud. Emma moved like water through the rocks, her smaller size turning into an advantage as she flanked the clustered shooters on the right. The girl was good. Really good. Made Cole wonder what else Sarah had taught her during those 15 years he'd missed. Marcus's men weren't prepared for a coordinated assault from two directions. They'd expected one desperate ranger trying to protect a helpless teenager. Instead, they got a father-daughter tactical team with matching anger issues and nothing left to lose. "You always were too stubborn for your own good," Marcus shouted over the gunfire. He'd taken cover behind an overturned jeep, his expensive suit looking ridiculous in the desert landscape. "Could have just walked away, Cole. Could have kept your mouth shut and your badge clean." Cole put 3 rounds into the jeep's engine block. Some things are worth fighting for. Emma appeared behind Marcus's position like a ghost. How she'd moved that fast through hostile territory without getting shot was beyond Cole's understanding, but there she was. Gun trained on the back of Marcus's head. Steady hands, clear eyes. "Drop it," she commanded, voice carrying authority that would have made her mother proud. Marcus turned slowly, hands raised but smiling. Well, the lost princess has some bite after all. You know, you look just like your grandmother. She had the same self-righteous streak that got her killed. Emma's finger tightened on the trigger. Keep talking. But Cole could see something Marcus couldn't. The slight tremor in Emma's hands. The way her breathing had changed. She was 15 years old, and she'd never killed anyone before. Didn't matter how well Sarah had trained her. Taking a life left marks that never fully healed. "Emma," Cole kept his voice gentle, "lower the weapon." "He deserves to die," she said without taking her eyes off Marcus. "After what he put those girls through. What he put you through. What he does." Cole moved closer, hands visible and non-threatening. "But you don't deserve to carry that weight. Some burdens are mine to bear." Marcus laughed. "How touching. The prodigal father protecting his daughter's innocence. Too bad you're both going to—" Cole's shot was precise and final. Marcus crumpled without another word. The canyon fell silent except for the wind through the rocks and Emma's ragged breathing. "Is it over?" she asked. Cole looked at his daughter, really looked at her for the first time. 15 years old, brave beyond her years, carrying grief and strength in equal measure. A stranger who shared his eyes and his stubborn refusal to back down from what was right. The shooting part is. He holstered his weapon. The rest is just beginning. 6 months later, Cole still felt nervous every time his phone rang. But today's call was different. "Dad?" Emma's voice came through the phone crystal clear, but Cole still couldn't get used to that word. 6 months of phone calls, letters, and carefully planned visits hadn't made it feel real yet. "Hey, kiddo." He leaned back in his desk chair at Ranger headquarters. Same office, same badge, but everything felt different now. "How's college treating you?" "Criminal justice is harder than tracking down deadbeat Texas Rangers." She laughed, and Cole heard Sarah's humor in it. "Professor Martinez says I have natural instincts for law enforcement. Wonder where that comes from." Cole smiled. The kid had decided on her own path, but she'd chosen one that kept them connected. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. "Got your latest letter," Emma continued, "about the trafficking case in Laredo. You know you don't have to update me on every operation, right? I'm not going anywhere." That was the thing Cole was still learning. Emma wasn't going to disappear if he made a mistake. She wasn't fragile. She was choosing to build something with him, one conversation at a time. "Old habits," he admitted. "I missed 15 years of telling you about my day. And I missed 15 years of rolling my eyes at dad jokes. We're even." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It used to be. Those first few months, Every pause felt loaded with unspoken guilt and missed opportunities. Now it just felt like family. "I graduate in 2 years," Emma said eventually. "Thinking about applying to the Texas Rangers. Someone's got to keep you honest." Cole's chest tightened with pride and terror in equal measure. The world doesn't need another Brennan with a badge. Maybe not, but it needs Emma Mitchell with one. Her voice carried quiet determination. "Mom always said the best way to honor the past is to build something better from it." After they hung up, Cole walked to his window overlooking the Texas landscape. Same endless horizon he'd stared at for years. But it looked different now. Less like punishment, more like possibility. On his desk sat Emma's photograph next to his ranger badge. Not hidden away like some shameful secret, but displayed proudly alongside his commendations and case files. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Your daughter always. Your partner in fighting the good fight. When you're ready." Cole typed back, "Ready when you are, kiddo." Some second chances were worth the wait.